Well, welcome to our talk and discussion today around friction points in the vehicle buying process. My name's Anu Roberts. I'm the Senior Director of Product Marketing for Modern Retail. And I am lucky enough to be joined today by Chris Royle, who is our Chief Product Officer at Ford Direct, and Peter Kahn, who is our Head of Research at CDK. So, Peter, let's get started and talk about the fifth annual research that you just did, you and your team just concluded with friction points. And as we dive in, I really want to get a sense of why it's so important for us to do this study year over year.
Yeah, it's a great question. And first of all, great to be here at New Orleans. Most of us made it, I think. Anyhow, friction points, we've been doing that since 2021. And at CDK, we're very, very focused on how do we improve variable operations? How do we make it such that, first of all, the number one goal for dealers that we find out year after year is improving customer experience. What does that really mean? And we start with the shopper to really understand that. But what we're also very focused on is, again, how do we drive more units through the showroom with same or less people? So we're interested in productivity. And then we're also interested in knowing generally how long does it take to sell a car, and are there things that we can do from a people training standpoint, a process improvement standpoint, or supporting technology, again, to improve experience, to make variable operations more seamless and make variable operations more efficient. So that's the genesis of friction points. Like I said, we've been doing it for 5 years now. I think we're here to talk about what we learned this time around.
Yeah, and one other aspect of the study, Peter, is it a survey around just the dealerships, or do we also focus on the consumer side?
So in the latest survey, again, we start with the shopper, and we heard from over 1,200 shoppers. Good mix of folks, they bought a car in the last 6 months, and we're really interested in their experience. And then we turn around and we hear from dealers, and we heard from over 400 dealers, mostly sales managers, some store leaders, and then a fair number of sales associates as well as F&I. So a great, survey this time around from hearing from the folks that we needed to hear from.
So Chris, it's always good in these studies to show really the measurements, because we can't improve what we don't measure. So would love to get your perspective on the importance of data and analysis on the buying and selling process.
Yeah, thank you. Thanks for having me, by the way, and compliments on the study. It is very insightful, very useful for, I think, everyone that's involved in the industry, so thank you. Having consistent data that addresses both the consumer side and the dealer side and brings those together in that point where the two meet in the store and around the digital transaction is hugely valuable to everybody. Making sure that you understand what's happening specifically in your store is how you go about making improvements for yourself and moving these numbers in the direction you want them to go. And we've spent a lot of time over the past 4 years, as many people have heard, building our customer journey platform, where we pull a lot of this transactional data together, and then layering the survey over the top of it really helps us focus on the data we need to gather, the data points we should be focused on, and how we work with dealers to make it all better. So very important.
That's great.
Yeah, I want to pick up on a point that Chris made, because it's really important, and that is bringing this information back to the dealers and getting them motivated to act on it. Mm-hmm. That's so important. And the interesting thing, again, we've been doing this for so long, and we are seeing improvement, definitely, but I would have expected more.
Right.
So, again, bringing back these insights and the actual production data that comes from, whether they're working with the DR system and the CRM, and bringing that back and acting on it with thoughtful plans is so important.
Well, and Peter, that leads me to my next question, which is one of the highlights. One of the good news is that time has improved a little bit on the time it takes to purchase the vehicle, and the number of consumers that are able to finish a deal under 2 hours actually went up to about 61%, which is the highest it's ever been since we've been doing this study. So that's really great news. Last year, I think it was at 54%, so that's a very nice bump up. And we know, Peter, we talk about this a lot, the correlation between the time it takes to purchase the car and customer satisfaction, the NPS score. So what I found striking in our study this year is that although the improvement was made in that time, the overall satisfaction scores didn't really improve. So why do you think that is the case?
Yeah, to your point, definitely, first of all, time is your friend, time is your enemy. And I want to talk a little bit about that because, and especially with Gen Z, so we pay a lot of attention to the different generations. I'm a boomer, got a daughter who's a Gen Z, and those folks are coming in with a very different perspective. Gen Z does want to spend a little more time up front because this is the first time they bought a car, they want to hear from an expert, they want to get all these questions answered. It's a new experience for them. We're boomers, they know what to expect, and they're looking to move through the sales process a little bit faster. We do ask shoppers overall, what is unreasonable for a time? And anything more than 2 hours is considered unreasonable. So the fact that we're bringing 61% into that 2 hour or less time frame is fantastic, and it goes back to your point about the Net Promoter Score, that satisfaction score. And honestly, if somebody's getting that transaction done in 2 hours, it's pretty darn good. I think we came up with the mid-50s NPS. Anything above, with a consumer study, anything above 40 is great. So good news there. Now on the other side of that, if it took 3 hours or more, we saw NPS really go down. And to your point, what is causing that delay? And that delay is happening everywhere. And that's one of the areas we saw problems. And it really comes down to wait. Customers wait all the way through their journey. And the wait times, the percent of folks that had to wait went up, particularly with the test drive. I think it was like 41% of the folks that responded to us, again, over 1,200 shoppers, said they had to wait before they could do the test drive. They're coming in for the test drive. The test drive is what sells the car. We get that from some of the other research we do. So having that wait is honestly a buzzkill.
Yeah.
And it does go back to the dealership operations and looking at those operations saying, is there a better way to improve the operations to eliminate or reduce the wait time? Again, to keep that journey going, keep that excitement flowing, get them excited about the car, getting to test drive and getting to the deal desk.
Yeah, that's great. And then Chris, how is Ford Direct working with your dealers on striking that balance, as Peter talked about, of efficiency and really the quality of the customer experience?
Yeah, I think first of all, what we're maybe seeing, and I'd be interested in trying to pull this out of the data, is the 2 hours in store to buy the vehicle is only a component of the total NPS.
Right.
So it may well be the other components waiting for the test drive, the transition from digital to in-store that is really driving that challenge. But we're helping by identifying for dealers where we believe the best-in-class solutions are, bringing those into our programs, helping dealers deploy them, and then consulting with the dealers across a whole range of metrics associated with the sales process, the lead handling processes, and making sure that we're giving the dealers the best information possible to make improvements in their store.
Yeah, and Chris, you had talked about not necessarily maybe the full picture there, which leads me to asking you about the online experience and connecting that, and how is Ford Direct really helping really do that, connecting that online experience that we know that the vast majority, 90% plus, consumers want to complete some key steps online.
Mm-hmm.
So how do you guys see that and the connection of that online to in-store experience?
Yeah, absolutely. It's one of the reasons we exist, right, is to help that digital experience be the best it can be by integrating not only the manufacturer data, but also the data across the dealers' systems, their own data back into those best-in-class tools to improve that online experience, while not ignoring that at some point the vast majority of consumers do come into the store, and making that seamless transition is absolutely critical.
So one of the effects of that disconnected experience from online to in-store is actually has to do with the data. and about a quarter of customers have to re-enter their data, and it's a big pain point from the dealership staff as well. How is this really impacting the overall experience in addition to the other disconnection that we talked about, the data flow?
Yeah, great question, and Chris brought up a really good point. So the initial discussion we've had around friction points is the showroom experience. But we know it starts long before the showroom experience. Shoppers are online and they're doing work, and they're actually engaging a lot of times with the digital retailing tool. They're putting time and effort into it. And so if they have done that and they show up, we found that 3 out of 4 dealers recognize that the customer did engage with the DR or tool and took that sales process and then went forward with that journey. But 1 out of 4 basically told the customer, I don't know who you are. So they had to start all over again. And we asked those shoppers, the 25% that spent that time working in the DR tool and not having that work recognized, how did you feel? Mostly frustration and anger, and their NPS went from an average of the high 40s, those who did engage with the tool and it was picked up, down to 16.
Wow.
So right up front, it's all about first impressions. And if you don't have your process worked out, if you aren't honoring the fact that the shopper's already making those decisions and entered that information and ready to go, you've really missed the boat.
Yeah. Now, Peter, talk a little bit about, that's a lot of the consumer frustration side, but what's this on the dealership side with the salesperson, sales manager, F&I manager? What's the impact to them of this lack of data flowing consistently between the systems?
Yeah, it's so we've talked a lot about the shopper, and we've talked about the journey, and now let's come around on the dealer side. We know dealers want to succeed. We know they want to do well. We know that they want to get the vehicle sold, but then they're dealing with a lot of frustration themselves. A lot of it has to do with systems that are disparate, systems that are not integrated. And so where are those, quote, friction points happening? And that's the things we really want to focus in, such as duplicate leads in the system that have to be cleared out so you can focus on the single lead. Going from one system to another and just figuring out how to use it, and actually having to enter data again. That takes time, that adds job stress, that leads to that situation where the shopper is waiting. So lack of integration, disparate systems, and we're finding, we ask folks how many systems do you typically use in a dealership to sell a car? Average is around 2 to 3. Sales managers are working with 6 or 7 or 8. F&I is the same, so they're going from system to system, rekeying, relearning. Sometimes those systems aren't available, they go down for a while. So that again adds to friction. And another area we saw, which was honestly very surprising, is that people are still waiting at the deal desk. They're still waiting at the deal desk. Do they need to wait at the deal desk? I would argue probably not. This could be old tapes that the dealer is wanting to do, but certainly good desking systems can put parameters around the deal to make sure that if it goes outside the parameters, then they go to the deal desk. So this is where I want to bring this back to the general manager, to the dealer principal, to the general sales manager, and say, understand your workflows. Mm-hmm. Understand where those frustration points are, where are those job stresses, where are those time killers, and why. We're now in a place, we don't want to go back to 2019. We want to go forward. Right. And we don't want to reintroduce bad habits from the past. And that's why I think, for me anyhow, doing the work around friction points and getting out to folks is so important.
Yeah, absolutely. One of the other areas in the study that you covered was the dealers' top strategies for 2025. And they largely remain unchanged. Improving customer experience remains the number 1 strategy, but it's down year over year. And so, Chris, this is where I'm curious from your perspective on that the shifting strategy there and how that reconciles with Ford Direct's digital transformation initiatives, and how you're really helping dealers meet that customer experience, improving that customer experience.
Yeah, so I'm a data guy and a product guy, right? It's in my job title. I've been around data my entire career. But so much of this is actually not a data problem or a tools problem. It's about change management, and it's about understanding the entire consumer experience. not just when they walk into the store, but as we've talked about, from the very first engagement all the way through. But making sure that you're working to understand that entire journey and working on the change management processes necessary to support the experience you're trying to drive. And we spoke about this before we came up here. One of the things that I think dealers may want to recognize is what is it they're trying to achieve. There was a huge drive, obviously, during the pandemic to enable fully remote buying. That seems to be a very small portion of the consumer base that really wants to go that far. So making sure you align your internal processes with your systems, and for some dealers that is full digital retailing. Some dealers are being very successful at it. They have their in-store processes well aligned, and it's working very, very well for them. But for other dealers, maybe that's not what you should be trying to achieve. And if you're not going to buy in fully, then you should be transparent with yourself and understand how much process change, how much change management you're willing to take on, and make sure that you have systems, tools, and data that reflect that process and don't create these big disconnects for the consumer.
Yeah, that's such a great point, because I feel like we don't talk enough about that change management and the process, which is just the key to the success there. So
Absolutely.
That's great that you touched on that. So I want to shift.
Yeah, and to Chris's point, and we do hear this, especially from store leaders, DPs, and general managers, is getting people to change. That's hard for all of us. And an introduction of technology into processes to improve processes. That's a tough part of the job, but it's a critical part of the job.
Yeah, absolutely. So I do want to shift us just a little bit to talk about the emergence of AI in the front office, because that's, all you hear about in every aspect is AI everything. So we actually, this was a change in the survey this year, as we added some AI components because we wanted to find out a little bit more about how dealers were thinking and consumers were thinking about AI. And what the study indicated was about over a third of dealers have said that they have implemented some form of AI into their variable ops. So Peter, what are you seeing as the applications that dealers are implementing AI across?
Yeah, it's become an AI world out here. Yeah. So we've been doing an AI study for probably 3 years now, and we also brought it into Friction Points to understand it better. And to your point, about 30% of folks have adopted AI. We do ask in the survey their attitude toward change. Are you one of the first dealerships to adopt change, or are you kind of in the middle? And we found that the folks that say I'm more leaning into change, 46% of those folks had adopted AI compared to 16% of the folks that hang back a bit. Now, why does that matter? And let's talk about the applications that you brought up. So for one example, of course, is an appointment setting. And we find that over 60% of folks, at the end of the day, if they're going to come down to do a test drive, they're going to pick up the phone and they're going to call. And so for some folks, that works out just fine. They actually can connect with somebody. But other folks are running in, they may not get to the person they need to talk to schedule an appointment. They may have to navigate a phone tree. They may be put on hold. And we found if they are put on hold, the average wait time is 10 minutes to schedule an appointment. Wow. Now, then we went ahead and asked, okay, if you had a choice between talking to a person and talking to an AI system to be able to immediately schedule that appointment, 30% said, I'll take the AI system. And when we asked Gen Z, 50% said, I'd rather go with the AI system than wait and go through all that hassle for the phone call. So that's a great example for where AI can help you out. And to that end, when we ask about, from a dealer side, how much did that help you? We saw lead to close, 46% said lead to close ratio went up. So just there is one example of, by bringing one application of AI in, can make a financial difference and a customer experience difference. And those customers, certainly the Gen Z, are ready to adopt that. A few other areas, certainly looking at your leads, high propensity leads, AI can help you identify those. Right. Suggested vehicle, making sure when you respond to the customer and we used to do mystery shopping like crazy, see all kinds of cars come back or none. Having some AI guide the vehicle selection and move that person into the right car that fits their needs. So we did find in another survey that 94% of the folks that worked with the dealership and worked with an AI system, the salesperson put them in the right car. So AI can make a huge difference, and it will.
Yeah, that's great. And Chris, how is Ford Direct approaching AI integration into the consumer and dealer experience, and what does that vision look like in the next few years, would you say?
So the first thing I would say, it's a hugely complex and rapidly changing space, and there's a lot of land grab going on at the moment across partners and dealers.
Yeah.
So it's complicated and challenging. We believe that the data we have, having built our customer journey solution, CJP, which is our CDP, over the past 4 years, will really help dealers make the most of those AI solutions, because the generically trained large language models can have an interesting conversation with you and can do some basic things like set an appointment. But understanding the consumer's history with the store, understanding when the last service event happened, what the declined services were, what the situation is with the vehicle, if there are any outstanding warranty or other issues that need to be addressed. All of that enriches the ability of the AI solutions to have a meaningful engagement with the consumer, not just what I would consider a somewhat dumb engagement,
right,
where yes, it knows a lot about general topics, but it knows nothing about the consumer's history with that store.
That's a great.
Yeah, that really is the next frontier for sure.
Yeah.
Good stuff.
Thank you.
So as we wrap up, Peter, what are some things that dealers can focus on over the course of the next 12 months, 18 months to really help improve that experience and get over some of these friction point challenges you talked about?
I mean, my recommendation is, again, going back to those workflows, understanding, I think it's important for folks to understand their workflows. Don't fall back to what was the quote tried and true, which ended up, having compressing profit margins, but understand what does it take to sell a car. To Chris's point, are you really going to use DR? And if you are, great. Make sure your sales team knows how to work with the DR system and work with the customer. But if you're not, it's probably, don't lead people on if you're not going to act on it. I think that's an important takeaway that Chris brought up. I think if somebody has not looked at AI or have not invested in AI, they should think about that. Maybe plans over the next 1 to 3 years on where it would best fit. Walking around the show and understanding what capabilities out there, but always knowing, again, it comes back to managing your people, managing change, and implementing technology into the processes so the processes still work seamlessly and it gets the job done.
Yeah, those are great ones. And then Chris, similar question for you. What is, from an OEM perspective, what do you see as some of the biggest opportunities that dealers have in the next 12, 18 months?
Yeah, so from an OEM perspective, we're really looking at tierless. Everyone here at the show, right? We know which tier we're in and we know which tier we're serving. It really is or should be totally transparent to the consumer. So no matter where the consumer starts their experience, whether that's on a manufacturer's site or on a dealer site, whether it's a third-party site, really making that entire engagement totally seamless and tierless for the consumer is a big focus for us. We're obviously closely working with our OEM partner, the motor company, to make sure that we connect with them as closely as we can, and that we always take that customer perspective in ensuring we understand how the data and systems we put together impact that total customer journey. And then continuing to measure that customer journey, right? We measure it and it's so you can improve it. We think it's absolutely critical to have a cross-tier view of that customer's journey because that's how the consumer perceives it. So
right,
taking out a big chunk of that data and ignoring it in any customer journey system that you're building really does hinder the ability to be robust.
Yeah, well, I love how Love how you stated that, because I do it. I think all of us that work in this so passionately, and it does take that ecosystem to really get to where we want to be. I know that our team, our modern retail team, is very focused on addressing a lot of this. Taking a more holistic approach from the consumer journey, the dealer journey. Enabling that very transparency that you talked about, very flexible experience, making sure that data flows and the integration is there. So really great point. I think that the point you both made around process is also just such a valuable area that we've got to just continue to really press into, because we have all these great solutions and tools, and as you mentioned, AI is coming fast and furious, and it's complicated, and so how can we implement this in a way that's going to make that impact, and help dealers make that impact to the consumer. So, well, I appreciate both of you having the time this morning to talk about through the friction points and how we can help both the consumers and the dealer side on overcoming some of the challenges in the car buying and selling process. So much appreciated. Thank you.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you.